Good day, everyone. Last but not least lecture in the series of workshops during the hackathon Prague preparation will focus on a template for the project that one may use for creating a Telegram web application connected to Tone blockchain. The speaker for today is Shahar. He's
Hello.
Jeton Live creator. And Shahar is great technical expert of Tone. He writes front end, back end, and smart contracts. Today on the stream, Shahar will revolve around using the template and modify the GitHub repo that he has prepared for the community. Participants to fork it and add their own functionality, connect wallets, and everything else. After the workshop, one may do a basic operation against Tone transfer, transfer jeton, and many more. So, thank you very much, Shahar, and please
Yes, thank you for having me.
can you tell a little bit about yourself, your background, and let's go to the workshop.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Shahar. I work at Orbs for the past 6 months or so. I have a strong background in the back end, front end, and mobile, and recently, since starting at Orbs, Web3 as well. So Orbs is a blockchain infrastructure company, positions itself as a layer three company, which means we allow for numerous types of executions that are done off chain to complement functionality that just doesn't exist there. We're heavily invested in Ton, and we're excited about it for many reasons. One of which is, the early stage that Ton is in. So Ton is, I think, very exciting technically speaking, but it had this history where it had to sit, on the fence for a few years or so, and now everything's picking up, and the ecosystem is still very young. You will see in this workshop that it's hard to work with it at this stage, but it's also a great opportunity. So this was one of the main reasons why creating Jiton Live was something that came at the right time, because the Jiton standard came out, and there was no really a good tool to deploy your own Jitons. So wrapping all of that in a decentralized app was something that was rather simple in a sense, but has a huge impact on the community. And there are many more things much bigger that we plan to do. But also, I think another exciting aspect is the community sense of it, that we're working on standards with other teams, and creating open source organizations such that everyone can contribute to it. So hopefully, this becomes a synergy thing where all the tooling and the development environments become really comfortable to work with, and gain the all the knowledge from the different teams. So ORB specifically aims to provide, for example, a gateway for interacting with the chain. It's a real problem today that we don't have a really free to use Ton gateway where you can, even make simple get calls. Everything is rate limited, or partially available publicly. So Orbs plans to utilize its L3 infrastructure for that. Also, we have on our roadmap a voting decentralized app similar to snapshot.org, if you're familiar with it, that will help with building DAOs on Ton, and providing a means to vote on proposals based on stakes in Ton or in Gtons. And another thing we're working on is a product to help you verify sources. That's also a big problem that we have now. If you take a look at a certain contract on chain, you don't know what source it came from. So we want to provide, a system where you can upload code, and we will verify that it matches whatever on chain. So we have many things coming up on Tone. We're really investing it. One of the reasons I'm participating in person, the conference starting tomorrow. So yeah, I'll be there acting as a judge, hoping to get to know as many interesting projects and teams. And feel free to hit me up. You have the Telegram handle right here. Um, and I'd be happy to assist anyone participating in the hackathon, technically on or product. So yeah, that's about me and Orbs. Um,
Great, thank you very much. Now for our viewers, don't forget that we have a contest for the best question for Q&A, and the winners will receive 30 ton, and you can prepare during the presentation and workshop. Okay, guys, Shahar, dear viewers,
yeah,
we start our workshop and
sure.
engineering and prototyping.
Thank you. Okay, cool. So what we want to do here is to mainly help participants in the hackathon accelerate their work building dApps that interact with the Ton chain. Everyone's background vary. I don't know how many people would be able, to hack on fancy itself and write smart contracts. So this assumes we're interacting with existing contracts. We'll touch very briefly on how to interact with these contracts, maybe look at some fancy code, but not really modify it. So we want to understand in this session, the main building blocks that one needs in order to interact with Ton. So another thing that I should mention that, we named it as a TWA session, but we're really piggybacking here the TWA as a means for distributing the app and getting up to speed. We're not really using the TWA API. I think there was a great session yesterday, which I watched, which discussed all the benefits that TWS give. So I think if you combine the knowledge you gained from this session with the previous one, you can get a lot, get very far in the hackathon. So what we're going to do is to have a very brief view of what a Ton dApp architecture looks like and why does it work the way it does. Then we'll touch briefly on the libraries that we need, and then we'll move on to an interactive demonstration where we fork the repo. I'll discuss what does the repo contain exactly. We'll set up a bot, and we'll even try to modify it in this session, add some functionality to it. And then we'll take some questions. So this is the skeleton of your average Ton app. We have the user, and if we're using the TWA, we have a bot that redirects to a certain URL. We're using GitHub Pages because it was the simplest form we could come up with, where we have the GitHub actions to deploy our code to a static page on each commit. And the dApp from that point has to do one of two things. It either wants to talk to the chain by reading data, which essentially means calling get methods, reading balances, things like that. And for that, it needs a Ton gateway, because Ton itself has the concept of light clients, which talk in a proprietary protocol, which is called ADNL. So it doesn't expose a REST API on itself. So we need an HTTP server that does the translation for us and mediates. So this would be the Ton gateway. And the Ton gateway is able to query contracts on the Ton chain. So this is for the read path. And if we want to mutate anything, we need a wallet that can act on behalf of us. So in order to speak with the wallet, we need a mediating server as well. This is because consider a situation where the dApp is working from your computer, but the wallet is installed on your mobile app. So we need something to issue notifications to the wallet app and prepare all the data it needs to issue transactions. So this is the TONX server. TONX is one of the standards that currently exist. It works currently only with the TonHub wallet, which we're relying on in our demo repo. And we use that and its corresponding library to communicate with our wallet app, and I'll demonstrate that app ahead in the session. The wallet app from this point continues to send transactions as external messages to the user's wallet contract. So let's just explain briefly what that means. Every wallet on Ton is a contract by itself. It's special in the sense that it exposes the ability to receive external messages. External messages are messages coming from outside the chain, meaning not internal as in from another contract. So external messages are being delivered to the user's wallet contract, which then continues to forward them onto other contracts as needed. And we'll explain that in more depth as we see the code. So library-wise, what we need in order to interact with the Ton contract is a JavaScript library. There are two main libraries at the moment, Ton Web and Ton. We use here Ton. That we use to building and parsing cells, which is the main data structure that Ton works with. And it also exposes a Ton client, which we can use to make the get methods against the chain. And the other library we're using is TonX, which I've mentioned. This creates the session from our dApp to our wallet. We use that to get the wallet's address and for issuing transactions. And of course, we also need the wallet app to issue the transactions for us. So let's discuss the TWA repo. So this is a little thing that I've created for the hackathon specifically. It belongs to the Ton DeFi org that you can see here. It's part of a few repositories that we have that help jumpstart development in Ton. One of which is how to develop your first smart contract. We're going to interact with it with one that's already deployed, but just that you know that it exists here in case you want to dive in developing smart contracts. And this repo revolves around interacting with Ton as a dApp. So a few things to note. It's very opinionated. Okay, I've taken the decisions to work with TonHub, TonX, React, Vite, and the Ton npm package. Also, we're using React Query there. So everything's very opinionated, and I'd be happy, to receive contributions for that to add support for other wallets down the road. So we're gonna need Node.js and a TonHub wallet. So the TonHub wallet, I'm streaming from my phone. Let's just take a look at how it looks. So this is it. One second while it loads. Okay, so I have a Ton wallet with an address. It has some balance in it. And this is the wallet that we're going to use for our interactions. And the repo contains a few things. It has the React app. It has a GitHub action set to deploy to GitHub pages on each commit to the main branch. And we have a script to tie your Telegram bot to the deployed app's GitHub pages URL. So let's just follow the instructions real quick. We're using the use the template button and remembering to include all the branches because we need the GitHub pages branch as well in order for the GitHub actions to work for us and deploy it. So let's choose whatever it gives us. And we can close that. Cool. And now we're going to clone it and install what we need. Okay, so we have everything installed. Now we want to create a bot with the bot father. So let's bring up Telegram here and create a new bot. Probably there will be some like this, so let's choose a random number. Okay, good. So we have the access token, which is essentially what we need. And now we run the configuration script. So we're entering the access token. It auto detects our username and repo name. Good. So it tells us that now this bot will redirect to this GitHub Pages URL. So let's just verify that the GitHub Pages deploy action is completed. So not yet.
Shahar,
In the meantime, yes, sure.
can you please, when you show the code and the repos, just a little bit zoom the pages because it's a little bit crashed the picture and
Is
how
this
to say, or
this okay?
yes, it's better. And with the terminal, you can make something similar, like make fonts bigger.
Yeah. Okay, let's even do the process all over again, just that it doesn't get lost. So
Yeah.
I've ran node configure.js. I'm pasting my access token and using the detected repo and username. So it issued an API call to Telegram's API in order to redirect my bot to the GitHub Pages URL. So we see that now this is complete. What I'm expecting to see here is that if I go to my bot, the web app will open. Okay, so let's try that. So bot father. Okay, let's start. We have the launch web app here. Let's see. Okay, we can make this larger too. Cool. Okay, so we have the app open. One thing that's interesting that I was already connected. I'm not sure how it shared the local storage from another site. That's odd. But in any case, that's how we're supposed to see this. Okay, we have the web app deployed, and let's just take a quick brief of what it does exactly. So I'm connecting to the wallet. It opened my ToneHub wallet on my mobile because I'm doing this entire thing from my mobile phone. And once it does, and I'm authorized, then the wallet address gets reported back. I have the balance here. I've added a few operations that you can do. So one of them is to transfer TON. The address preset here is a zero address. So if you'll be sending TON there, you're essentially burning them. This is the counter smart contract that appears in our previous, the previously mentioned contract repo, the sample contract repo. So there's a contract there that essentially is a counter where you send transaction in order to increment it. And there's a special variant of JITON that I've prepared that acts as a faucet, so anyone can really ask for JITONs from it. So I already have some balance because I interacted with it before. but anyone can try and get JSONs from the faucet, and it will send you 150 JSONs on each request. So this is the way the DApp looks like after you've cloned it. So this is from our fork actually. Now let's open the code, make sure it's nice and big, and take a look at the entry point. Okay. So first thing we see here is regular React app. We're using the React query, hence the query client provider that we see here. And we move on to the tone connector. So tone connector uses the React ToneX, which is a React binding for the ToneX mediating library, reminding you that this is the part that's responsible for connecting your dApp to the wallet. It does so via a server, which holds the sessions. And we're also constructing here a tone client, which is the part that we use in order to make get calls onto the chain. So what I want to show here, I won't go through the entire connection logic, but once we do connect, if we're not connected, we're showing the part where you have the button, or in the case of desktop, that would be a QR code, which you can scan. And if we are connected, then we're showing all these parts that we just saw. So this would be tone wallet details is the part with the balance. Transfer tone is what lets you transfer tones to a different address. This is for interacting with the counter contract, and this is for the GTONs. So let's go over this really briefly because I want to make sure we have time to make the modifications to the GTON part. So tone wallet details. What it does is uses a React query, which is really a library for helping with maintaining asynchronous state. So we're doing a fetch here, and then it returns the data here. So TC stands for the tone client. We ask it for a certain address. The address that we're asking about is the connected address. We're using from React ToneX, which returns the connect object, which may contain the wallet address. And we're getting the balance here, and if we do, we return it. And that this part only renders the address, the balance, and the disconnect button. So fairly simple for now. This gets complex as we dive in. Transfer tone is a different thing because it needs to issue a transaction. So in order to issue a transaction, we're also using the connect object coming from React on X because reminding that we need to be able to communicate with the wallet somehow. So this is the simplest form of transaction that we can come up with. It only consists of the recipient, which is coming from the input, and the amount that is also coming from the input. This is transmitted as value. So we're essentially asking ToneX, please transmit this transaction to the wallet. And the transaction consists of an address, which is the recipient, and the value that we wish to transfer. If we want to see how it looks like, then let us open this and hit the transfer. So it says transaction requested, please check your wallet. What I'm expecting to see here now that if I go to my wallet transaction requested here. Okay, so we see this strange address with all these A's. This is the 0 address. And the amount that we wish to transfer, okay? So if we change here the amount, for example, we can see now, hopefully, okay, yeah, that the amount changes as well for a new transaction. So I'm closing this. We can even get the status back from TONX, so it tells us that the transaction was actually rejected by the user. This is important because everything is highly distributed here. It's not like a REST API where everything happens within the dApp. The dApp doesn't know directly what happens with the transaction. It relies on TONX to tell it how the user actually interacted with the wallet app. So yeah, this is when we want to transfer some tons. Next thing is the counter. So when working on the repo, I made some changes and didn't spread them across all the components. One of them is that I've created a hook for sending transactions. So this hook it wraps around React query and React on X to help us making sending transactions a bit more easy. And I can show you why. It's not that complex, but we want to get a few things from it. One is the serialization of the body. In the previous transaction, we didn't have a body because it only transfers value. But if we're interacting with a contract, then messages become much more complex. This handles the serialization part of the cell. We will see how we construct cells in a few minutes. And it also reports back in case the transaction was successful. I use it in this repo to trigger refetching of data. So for example, if I increment the counter via a transaction, I now have to poll the chain via a get method until it has actually incremented. So the trigger for me to start refetching data is that the user actually issued a transaction and I got the report back on it from React on X. So this is a helpful little thing for issuing transaction. We have its counterpart for making get calls, because making get calls is currently quite complex. The reason for that is mainly the parameters, both sending out parameters. For example, if I want to ask something about a certain address, so I need to provide that as a parameter. It's fairly hard to construct. And the second thing is parsing the return values. So there's a bunch of code here I won't get into for preparing the parameters. This is fairly crippled. It doesn't do much, but it again handles the serialization of the cells that we're sending to the get method. And the other part is parsing of the response values. So the hook does this for you. It also is wrapped with React query to tell you whether data is being fetched or not, so you can show a loading indication for that. So we're using this hook. We're asking the counter. Okay, we're sending here as the address, the counter address, which is hard coded. I deployed one instance of a counter address and just use that. It is asking for the counter get method of that contract. We supply no parameters here, hence the empty array. And this is the way that we're parsing whatever comes from the response. So we're expecting a number because it's a counter. We receive all numbers from the library as a big number, and then we return them as a string. So one thing, sorry, yeah, this is about the get call. So once we have the data here, we can show it. Okay, it would either show that it's loading or the counter value. If we want to send the transaction to increment, then we use the hook as well, where we send the transaction to the counter address again. we provide some value to it. The reason that we need to provide value is that the chain is doing some kind of computation for us. So we need to provide some kind of gas value to it. And the other thing that we need to do is to tell the contract what we expect it to do. So there's a standard way of constructing messages for contracts. It's not a strict requirement, but most contracts implement that, where the first 32 bits are an opcode. So the contract does a switch case on that, and it knows what it's expected to do. The next 64 ones are a query ID, which is something like a distributed tracing ID that contracts can pass on to another, and then you can look at the chain and look for your query ID to see what happened with your transaction in case it gets distributed across few contracts. And here would be the rest of the body. So we have the builder pattern here, okay, begin cell. This is coming from the npm tone library. We store a uint with the opcode with 32 bits. The opcode seems strange because it's a CRC32 of the definition of the function within the contract. So let me show this real quick. So this is the repo with the contract that I've mentioned earlier. We can see that it has this entry point, which is called receive internal. This is standard for contract. And it does here if op, which it read, you see it reads a 32-bit part. If op is equal to op increment, then it does something that implies that it increments the counter by 1. So op.increment is actually coming from an import from the constants file, the constant fancy file. And I just want to show you that the op increment corresponds to the same thing, okay? So this and this are equal. So this is the way the contract knows what I want it to do. It also exposes other operations there that we're not triggering with this transaction. So I won't be demonstrating it here, but if you press the counter increment button, it issues a transaction to your wallet. If you approve it, it will increment to 25. Okay, so the next part, which is the most complex at the moment, is the JSON. And the reason is that this is a real use case. I mean, JSON is a fairly complex standard. And we're using a few of its operations here. We're using the same hooks, okay, to do a few things. One is to get our JSON wallet address. I won't go into the architecture of JSONs, very deeply here, but just a quick note is that a JSON consists of a master contract, which is called the minter. And for each type of JSON that you have, you would have a separate wallet contract. So if I create a JSON, sorry, called Shahar, okay, or SHA, you would have a JSON wallet contract for that, providing that you have some kind of balance. So we need to calculate the JSON wallet address in order to query it. So we ask the minter. It exposes a get wallet address function. So again, we're using the use make get call hook, where we send a transaction to the minter address. We're asking for a get wallet address method for our original wallet address. Okay, this may be confusing, but unfortunately we don't have the time to cover all this ground. But think of it as some kind of translation from your regular wallet, the TonHub wallet, to the JSON wallet. Once we get the response, we format it as a string and return it back. Now that we have the address, providing that we have the address, okay, then we ask for its balance. We need to query the contract address itself now, and we ask for the JIT-on wallet addresses balance. This is how the balance gets reported in this part. So two separate calls we're making to the chain. They are dependent on each other because we need the JIT-on wallet address to complete first. And then we move on to the transaction part, which is, again, very complex. I don't want to get into most of it, but we're constructing here a cell that, again, follows the same pattern that I've mentioned earlier. It has an opcode. Here it's a hard-coded number, and the query ID, but then the body of the message continues, which we didn't have before. What this body means is, please mint more coins for me. A regular JIT-on minter would only accept this message from its admin address, but this variant that I created allows any address to actually ask for more JIT-ons. So again, not diving into this too much, but this is the part that asks for 150 JIT-ons to be added to the balance of my JIT-on wallet address contract. And then it sends the transaction with the body that we've constructed here. So what I want to do now is to add the functionality to burn JIT-ons. Burning is very much like sending them to a non-existing address, except that the JIT-on standard exposes this functionality, and it allows us to just burn, remove from circulation a certain amount of JIT-ons. So let's do it real quick. I'm opening a terminal here, so we can jumpstart the environment. So now this is what we have locally, okay? And just let's make sure that it modifies. Okay, good. We see it here. Now let's add a button. And let's use this button to burn a certain amount of JIT-ons, let's say 64.1. And now what we want to do is to issue another transaction. So the first thing we need is the burn opcode. In order to do that, we go to the JIT-on standard. And look for the burn specification there. This is called TLB. It's a way of describing data structures that are used across the TON blockchain. And we see that the opcode for burn is this. Okay, so we copy that. And now let's construct the body. So we begin a cell, and then we need the opcode as before. It's going to be a 32-bit uint. Then we need the query ID, which is going to be 0 because we don't really care about it at the moment. And then we're going to tell it how many coins we wish to burn. So I want to open this one more time. Okay, because we see this is the part that represents the 32 bits. This is the query ID, but then you can see we have the amount afterwards and a response destination, which is an address to be notified when the burn is successfully carried out, as you can see here in the description, and a custom payload that may exist or not. So we need to correspond to this TLB structure. So I've used store coins, okay, to store the amount. Now I'll be storing the address. For the address, I can use the user address that we have, and we'll do a store ref maybe null because we don't have any custom payload that we want to forward anywhere. So this will be our burn body. Now, all we need to do is to complete the builder. So we get back a cell and we issue the transaction. So this again goes, I'm using address parse because the Gton wallet address is currently a string. I'm passing a certain value to account for the computation done on the chain and adding the burn body to it. So yeah, to recap, what we've done here is we've added a button that constructs a body that will be sent to my Gton wallet address and instruct it to burn via the opcode with combination of the amount of coins that I wish to burn. So yeah, let's try it now. This is coming from my desktop, so I'm expecting to see a transaction request here. This represents the burn operation that we've just constructed. And now you can see that we're loading here, okay? We're loading until we see this, go down to 760 something, 20 something, okay? No, the reason that it went down by so low is because we sent it as a 64.1 nanos. So there are the way that coins are represented on blockchains usually is without a decimal point. So what happens is it only burned a very small portion of the coins that I wanted to burn. 2 nano, actually what it does, it pads the value with 9 zeros, so it actually becomes 64.1. So let's do that again. So again, we have the transaction requested. And now I'm expecting to see this loading again. The TON blockchain is very quick. It takes around maybe 7 seconds to close a block, and you can see my Gton balance here going down. So last thing we can do is to just commit this, and once we do, our app and the bot essentially will get updated using the ton the GitHub actions. So just to recap, in the meanwhile, while it builds, what we've done here is to take the template repo, create a new bot, inspect some of the code. Some of it is complex, I know, but it's only meant to act, as an introductory template for you to be able to interact with the Ton chain. And then we've added a modifying operation to the Gton part of it. So we can burn Gtons if we have them in balance. So regarding the repo itself, so please feel free to contribute if you think that's something that that can serve the community further out of the hackathon, or even for the hackathon itself. There are many things that can be improved here. So I'd be happy to taking in pull requests if you want to. So I think maybe, Artem, we can start taking questions. Oh, I see that, yeah, it got deployed. So let's just reopen it. Okay, so I'm reloading, and yeah, we have the burn Gtons live in the Telegram bot. So yeah, this concludes the demo part of it, and I'd be happy to take any questions now.
Okay, great. Thank you for the great workshop. I think our viewers really enjoy it, and as well, you can ask Shahar in the event in person and ask any questions and help list of the questions. So first is from a guy who's tag name the Open Net Fork. Okay, and he asked, "Hi, can we accept any decisions for swapping slash exchange tokens based on or from Shahar team? Can we expect any decisions for swapping exchanging tokens?"
For swapping and exchanging tokens.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a project called Ton Swap, which is a DEX that is already available. I'm not sure if it's publicly launched or silently launched at the moment, but there's Ton Swap, which is also open source, by the way, and we can use that in order to exchange Gtons and create pairs of tons of coins to be swapped. So this isn't really in the scope of Gton Live, but we have options for that.
Also, just notice that Tonana that Breach provide a rapid Solana, Near, Atom, Aurora tokens has placed or released these jetons on TonSwap, and the team of TonSwap will be also here in personally on the event. And guys, you will also be able to ask experts for help or consultation. Another other question from Victoria. Oh, I appreciated by info from Shahar on stream. So I can create a bot in Telegram, connect him to the web app, and allow to connect users Stone Wallet through the web app. It will be nice way to take payment through Telegram. So can I create a bot in Telegram and connect him to the web app and allow to connect users Stone Wallet through the web app?
So the way we connect with the Ton Wallet app is what I've demonstrated. I mean, I'm not currently aware of any way of doing it in a more integrated way. I mean, such that the wallet is connected directly to the Telegram app itself. That's why we're using all this machinery of Ton X and issuing transactions to the wallet. Um, so yeah, I hope that answers it.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, guys, we are waiting for your questions. That is that the best question will be rewarded by 30 tones. And the next one from can I specify in two field tone domain?
Um, that's a good question. It depends on how the Ton DNS standard works. I am aware that there is a way of connecting your Ton DNS to a certain wallet, and I only assume, okay, and I say it very carefully, that I only assume that it does handle such a case where it forwards the value sent to it to a certain address. What I'm aware of that, even in Ethereum, people aren't really using that when they're transferring, especially, very sensitive amounts of money, because, you want to go as low level as you can to be certain that it reaches, wherever you think it should reach. But I'm not 100% positive. It's something that can be checked with small amounts. But to answer that completely, we would have to inspect the Tom DNS standard.
Okay, understand. So now we have like the list of Okay, great. So, uh, it will be a question mostly for people who is Web2 developers and like backend guy, Java, Django's, and they will come to the event and they have a question. Why write or implement blockchain applications at all centralized Django web server? What is the main
So
centralized applications for like classic web developers? So bullet points.
yeah, so yeah, I wanted to touch, technically on the differences between, classic apps, REST API apps, and blockchain. But here we're talking about, a broader sense of it. So there are a few things, I think. One of them is the guarantee that you're getting. I mean, you're not hosting anything. There's this blockchain that you trust that will continue forever and will store your data forever in a decentralized manner. So you're not worried about, things being sanctioned or blocklisted or things like that. So you don't need permission from anyone to deploy a contract to the chain. I think that's a very powerful idea. And once you do that, you get all these traits that coming with it. I mean, it handles value accumulation for you in a very, global way. I mean, anyone can pass ton coins to a contract, and you can inspect its functionality and be certain that it works the way that it does if you know what's the code for the contract is, which relates to what I've discussed at the introduction, where we want to provide, the sources repository for the contract to help with things like that. And then I think it gives you, a very important level of confidence of passing value and money to contracts, which can do, pretty complex things without really having, to deploy any kind of server. So this is kind of an amazing thing. It doesn't work for anything. I mean, for any use case, it's not. It doesn't necessarily make sense, to build the next Facebook on the blockchain or something like that. But for now, purely things that deal with asset accumulation, dealing with financials, these things make a lot of sense building on the chain. And everything is still very early. I think that a lot of new use cases will emerge, hopefully from the hackathon this weekend as well. We can see cool stuff coming on. But yeah, the thing to remember is that a decentralized app is a whole different game with whole different use cases.
Yeah, I understand. From my point of view, and like I think from the business point of view, the most exciting thing for me that you as a developer can develop. If you talk about fintech and working with financing, the business logic that could be deployed on the blockchain, and you can transfer ownership or administration for your business stakeholder. And from that moment, you as a developer opportunity to impact the code, to impact the data. So the business is safe from their developers, because sometimes if we have team of the developers that should be paid for like all time of life cycle of the application, and it could break the business in some way, there people can make a discussion with each other. So it's very safe for the business to implement their business logic on chain, on based on smart contracts, and handle all that after the implementation. Okay, another question. How did you get started with Ton blockchain and contract?
Um, so um, So yeah, the first thing that I was asked to do when coming to Tone is to design the system that would later be the voting part where I mentioned that would help um, facilitating DAOs. Um, and then this opportunity to create Jiton Live came up,
Mm-hmm.
and I've done most of my early work on that. So I didn't really do a lot of smart contract writing at the beginning, because I just had to study the standard of JIT on Live. It was, as I mentioned, it's a complex thing, and coming, as a classic, let's call it developer, to Ton is not necessarily an easy transition. Considering the fact that you need to learn fancy, which is in its way not that hard, I think, but the paradigm is a bit different, and also TLB is could be non-trivial to understand and parse for a
Mm-hmm.
human. So we actually had a lot of help from the community on that as well. Helping us spot bugs in Digital Live. Um, and bringing it to maturity. So I would say, you know, one thing was relying upon the knowledge already gained within my team. So, most of you probably have heard of Tal Kol, which is, very prominent contributor for the ecosystem. Is the one who created uh, um, the Ton Starter contracts repo. So this is, it was a very good starting point for me. There are also very good blog posts by him on the Ton Society site, where you can learn about the difference between Fancy and Solidity, for example, and the different, even within blockchain development, there are different paradigms, and Ton is a different thing completely than Solidity. So yeah, there was that repo. There was a lot of reading of the documentation of Ton, some of the white papers, which are also great. Um, and yeah, and recently I've done some smart contract writing as well. After having my fair share of reading such contracts.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next question. Now, to create centralized applications for Tone and Telegram, we must use or any other cloud storage for front end, some off-chain logic. And the question is, can we build in the future fully decentralized application on Ton, including front end and some like what is now on the backend side on chain?
Okay, yeah, so that's a very good point. So there are a few things. One of them is, if you're considering storage, then there still exists the option of IPFS, which we're using currently as a temporary means of storage until Ton storage comes out. So Ton storage we don't know
Mhm.
too much about, but for me, anything that replaces IPFS would be good, because IPFS is very hard to work with at the moment, unless you're using your own pinning services, and then it kind of loses the point.
Mhm.
Then I don't want to get too much into it, but the entire replication part of it doesn't scale well enough at the moment. So Ton storage is one aspect of it. So that could provide scalable storage, because storing everything on the chain is too costly. So that's one aspect. The part of the computation, any computation that doesn't make sense doing on the chain, is very related to what Orbs is doing, because Orbs, as I mentioned, it's a layer 3 part, and what it means that we have dozens of decentralized nodes that are involved by staking a large amount of the Orbs token, and then we already are using them for decentralized execution. So essentially, you can think of it as a kind of Docker image that is spread around all these nodes, and it can provide complementary execution platform to the Ton chain. On the Ton itself, I think the only computation part I'm familiar with is the chain itself. So
Mhm.
hopefully Orbs could provide great value here.
And last question, what is typical for all participants? Uh, it's all people like often people meet that questions on the interview for the new job position, but we apply it to the projects. So, where do you see Jeton Live or Orbs in 5 years?
So Jitten Live, I only hope to see it, being contributed to by the community in case it needs anything. It provides currently. I think it provides quite a complete experience, and we're trying to address any concern that comes from the community. So I'm not sure it has such a long roadmap. I hope it stays alive or gets integrated in wallets and things like that, so it can provide value. And orbs. So I think the best thing I can wish for orbs is relates to what I've mentioned before, that it gets to use this incredible asset of the decentralized execution platform, which is something that is very hard to build, and harness all the value that it can from it. So it actually runs substantial computations for the ton community, and becomes like a first-class citizen within the ecosystem for that
Okay,
purpose.
nice. Last thing, uh, what you can wish for the participants of Hackathonics Prague?
So yeah, I think first of all, I wish them to come up with great ideas, to not get scared of the ecosystem. There are many, again, paradigm shifts that you need to make. There are many tooling nuances and annoyances that you need to come across. So don't get intimidated, and on the other hand, don't be shy. I mean, just hit me up or any other of the mentors, judges, to get help with what you need, so you can really make something useful over your time in the at the conference. And I'm really looking forward to meet everyone.
Great. Thank you very much. Dear viewers, thank you
Thank you,
for
Ethan.
your attention and questions. Happy to see you tomorrow on the hackathon of and first day of the hackathon. And let's enjoy the coding, prototyping, and building on Ton blockchain in Prague
Thank you, Ethan.
this week. And have a nice rest
Thank
of
you.
the
See you
day.
tomorrow.
Take care. See you
Thank
tomorrow.
you.
Bye.
Bye bye.